Hey everyone, this is Michael. Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Round Number on YouTube channel. Now, for today's show, I'll be discussing various aspects of 2025 that I found interesting and also my thoughts on 2026. This is part one of a three-part series that begins today and concludes this weekend. Now, let's start off by talking about Mick Foley. Foley is a WWE Hall of Famer and, in my opinion, one of the most respected voices in wrestling. He recently informed WWE that he no longer wants to make public appearances for the company. His reasoning: WWE's proximity to Donald Trump. According to Foley, a celebrity couple was murdered, and Trump's response to that tragedy pushed him past his breaking point. Foley, I get it. The situation was tragic, and you and I share the same sympathy for the victims. But let's be honest, celebrity deaths have been happening for decades. Undocumented immigration is not just a U.S. issue, it's a global issue, and it's not something invented by the Trump administration. And furthermore, Trump's association with WWE and the McMahon family goes back literal decades, yet I didn't hear you distancing yourself from WWE until a few weeks ago. That's odd, considering many Western wrestling fans always assume you'll be the level-headed one in a sea of loud reactionary voices. If Foley is going to take a stand over WWE's proximity to Trump, I expected him to point to serious world-shaping issues, things that actually escalate global tensions. Instead, what pushed him over the edge was a celebrity death and Trump's action and comments on illegal immigration. Now, here's a news flash. Those things happen in every country, and they're not the catalysts that lead nations into war. Meanwhile, Trump continues to advocate for regime change in Venezuela, openly supports Israel's ongoing actions in Gaza and the West Bank, and maintains military operations in Somalia. These are the kind of decisions that generally shape geopolitics and increase the risk of global conflict. These are the issues that could realistically contribute to a scenario of World War III. To close this out, Foley absolutely has the right, as an American citizen, to speak his mind and choose who he wants to work with. No one is denying him that. But what bothers me is the selective outrage we see from celebrities. Many won't criticize Trump's policies because doing so might implicate themselves or their wealthy friends. But when a celebrity friend is murdered and Trump doesn't offer the right soundbite when asked about it, suddenly they find their voice because that kind of outrage costs them nothing. Now, moving on, let's talk about Hulk Hogan. Now, Hulk Hogan passed away a little over 5 months ago on July 24th, 2025, after suffering an acute myocardial infarction at his home in Clearwater, Florida. He had long-standing health issues, including atrial fibrillation and chronic lymphatic leukemia. Now, after Hogan's death, Hogan received a private memorial service in July, but his embalmed body was later returned to a funeral home. Now, publicly, the only confirmed family viewing came in August 2025 when his daughter, Brooke Hogan, her real name is Brooke Bolea, reportedly saw his body after not attending the service. Despite the death certificate approving cremation, Hogan's remains have not yet been cremated. The delay seems to stem from his wife, Sky Daly, and other family members still seeking answers about his medical care leading up to his death. Now, some podcasters have claimed that the cremation occurred sometime after August, but there is no verified report to support this. And what's striking is how quiet the wrestling media and podcasters have become about this part of the story. And it raises a fair question. Is it anyone's business to know whether Hulk Hogan has been cremated? In my view, it's understandable why you feel it matters. When somebody as culturally significant as Hogan passes away, the handling of his remains becomes part of the broader narrative, especially when there are delays, conflicting reports, and unanswered questions. It's not morbid curiosity, it's about transparency in a story that has already been filled with family tension, public statements, and speculation. What is upsetting is the timeline. Like, we are approaching half a year since his death, and his body still hasn't been laid to rest. That's unusual, and it naturally raises eyebrows. It also puts the family in a difficult position. Acknowledging the delay publicly would invite scrutiny, criticism, and emotional backlash from fans and industry insiders. So instead, Nick, Brooke, and Sky seem to be avoiding the topic entirely, likely because any answer they give will create more questions than it resolves. This situation feels like a collision between private grief and public legacy. Hogan wasn't just a celebrity, he was a cultural figure whose life and death was documented, debated, and dissected. When the handling of his remains becomes prolonged and unclear, it becomes part of the story whether the family wants it to happen or not. And the silence only amplifies the discomfort. Fans aren't wrong to feel unsettled by the idea that one of wrestling's most iconic figures is still in a funeral home nearly a year after his passing. Now, let's move on to something that was talked about here on the podcast that our viewers enjoyed. And that was the conversation between the allegations between Jim Ross and D Von Dudley. Now, recently, Jim Ross has publicly and strongly denied D Von Dudley's allegations that he once made a racist remark towards him during the WWE Attitude Era. Now, here are the key points. And this is pretty long, so bear with me. So, D Von Dudley recently claimed that years ago, Jim Ross told him, and I quote, "I don't like you because of the color of your skin." Now, on JR's podcast, Grilling JR, Ross called the allegations absurd and said, and I quote, "shouldn't even merit a response." So Jim Ross insists that he never said anything racist to D-Von. He always liked and respected him. He personally hired the Dudley boys and helped book them during their peak. And, he has nothing to gain by lying at this stage of his life. Ross suggested that D-Von may be unhappy with his post-wrestling career compared to Bubba Ray, who has become a successful broadcaster. Ross defended his character by pointing to the many black wrestlers he signed, including Shelton Benjamin. D-Von originally revealed the allegation in October 2025, saying witnesses like Bubba Ray, Paul Heyman, Spike Dudley, and Tommy Dreamer were present. And the last key point, Devon said that he's forgiven JR, but, and I quote, doesn't have to forget. So this situation now puts fans in a tough spot because we're looking at two completely different accounts from two highly respected veterans. And as I said before, I talked about this on the channel, and even without re-listening to that episode, my stance hasn't changed. Black wrestlers historically have not held positions of power in the wrestling industry, certainly not enough to be insulated from racism or bias. So when Devon makes an allegation like this towards Jim Ross, it's not something I can casually dismiss as obviously false. Wrestling has long been dominated by individuals who controlled the territories, finances, and booking power. These were predominantly white Americans, Europeans, and later Japanese and Mexican promoters who established their own established systems. Like, black wrestlers have never had their own territory, their own promotional power base, or the same institutional leverage. And that imbalance matters. It shapes how people were treated, how opportunities were handed out, and how comments, whether intentional or offhanded, landed in real time. That's why allegations of racism in the 90s don't strike me as absurd. They fit into a much longer, much older pattern of black performers being talked down to, underestimated, or dismissed by people who held the power. That doesn't automatically prove anything about the specific situation, but it absolutely makes the allegation plausible in context. And then there's Jim Ross's response, suggesting that Devon might be making this claim because he's unhappy with his career. And this is where JR loses me. Like, it's such an unclassy thing, and it's such an unclassy angle to take, especially when Devon actually did have a strong post-ring career. He was a respected producer in the WWE. He enjoyed the work, and from everything publicly known, he wanted to continue producing elsewhere. And but one thing's for sure, this won't be resolved cleanly. There's no footage, no transcript. We haven't heard replies from additional third-party confirmations. Nothing. Like, Paul Heyman hasn't come out and said anything. Spike Dudley hasn't come out and said anything. Tommy Dreamer hasn't come out and said anything. The only person that really backed up what Devon said was Bubba. So, at this point, fans are left to interpret the story through the lens of wrestling's complicated past. Now, finally, before we end today's show, we got to talk about something that just recently broke. Thanks to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, teaming up with Post Wrestling, helped make public a batch of previously sealed documents from the shareholder lawsuit against Vince McMahon. And these filings give us the clearest look at how McMahon allegedly manipulated the board, the misconduct investigation, and the sale to Endeavor. And here are some key points of the previously sealed documents that were revealed to the public. The key points are, first point is McMahon was never actually out of power. And second is, the board may have protected him. Third is the sale to Endeavor may not have been a real competition. Fourth, WWE may have withheld damaging evidence. And first off, thanks to Thurston's work, we now know that Endeavor knew months before anyone. Sorry, I was talking ahead of myself. Thanks to Thurston's work, we now know Endeavor knew months before anyone admitted it. While WWE was out here selling the idea of a noble, competitive bidding process, Endeavor executives already knew the finish. They knew Vince was coming back. They knew he was selling. They knew the ending before the movie even started. This clearly wasn't a bidding war. It was a pre-arranged ordeal. And then there's an investigation. The board wants us to believe they ran a serious, independent inquiry into McMahon's misconduct. I mean, first of all, you got Nick Khan, who's a board member, one of the supposed adults in the room, having back-channel conversations with Vince while Vince is supposedly gone, and then telling him, and I quote, to during a conversation to take this over to Signal. Now, Signal is something I've never heard in my life. I heard of something called Telegram, but Signal I never heard of. I never heard of anybody using Signal. This was very new to me. So Signal is a encrypted app, messaging app that allows disappearing messages. It's the digital equivalent of whispering in a parking garage wearing sunglasses at midnight. And you want to know what the best part is? Nick Khan probably didn't tell the rest of the board. Nope. He just had a little private group chat with auto delete turned on, like they were planning a surprise birthday party instead of a multi-billion-dollar corporate merger under federal investigation. This is the same board that wants you to believe they ran an independent investigation. Independent. Half of the board probably didn't even know what the other half was talking to Vince on an app designed to erase the evidence. So when you put it all together, and I encourage you to go to Brandon's site at WrestleNomics, where he has the documents up so you can read them. When you put it all together, the predetermined sale, the half-informed board, the chairman who was supposedly gone but never actually left, and a co-president running covert ops like he's auditioning for a reboot of 24, the show. And WWE still wants everyone to believe this was a clean, transparent, competitive sale process. Come on. This wasn't transparency. This wasn't oversight. This wasn't governance. This was strictly kayfabe in a boardroom. Okay, so that does it for part one of this series. We'll see you tomorrow for part two and Sunday for part three. This is Michael of the Round Number One YouTube channel. Talk to you guys later.